Good afternoon, Year Six. I hope you're well and have had a good day so far. Today, in our geography, we're going to move on from looking generically at biomes to thinking specifically about both tundra and mountainous biomes. To be successful in today's session, we're going to identify through our recall the locations of different types of biome. We're going to clarify what a mountainous biome's characteristics are. So we're going to make sure we understand that. We're going to see what the characteristics of tundra biomes are. And finally, we're going to compare the two types of biomes as your piece of work emanating from today's session. Okay, so to begin with, we're going to look, sorry, that's your success criteria, so if I didn't come up. So we're going to look initially then at where different biomes are around the world. Now, really important you concentrate at this point because your first task is to complete a map related to these. Okay? So there's types of biomes we've got in around the world. There's different terms given to different ones, but alpine ones are those colder ones where there's mountain ranges. So sometimes rather than saying mountain biomes, we sometimes call them alpine ranges. Those are synonymous words. The chaparral, which are like hot like a desert, okay, but they sometimes have more rain than a desert. There's deciduous forests, which are those trees which the leaves come off in the autumn and will start to come back in the springtime, where the leaves don't stay on them throughout the year. There's desert biomes, which we looked at previously, and even in the desert biome, as we've experienced before, different desert biomes have different characteristics. So the Gobi desert that we looked at has different characteristics to elements of the Sahara, and even within the Sahara, there's more than one biome within that area due to more than one ecosystem due to the fact that the characteristics of the locations are different at different points. We've got savanna, so this is that mix between grasslands and woodlands. And there's animals such as zebras, giraffes, and lions, which might use that as a habitat. Taiga, which is the really wet areas, because it's so wet, the soil is not nutritious. And then tundra, which is one of the areas we're going to look at today, which is these really cold, harsh vegetation places that are found right at the top of mountains and poles. Okay, they're really snow covered, and life there is really, really really hardy, so really able to survive despite the difficult conditions. Okay, there we have those ones. Okay, so this is the map you need to just try and fixate your mind on for a second. So this is the biome location. Okay, so you can see that purple strip across the northerly element of the map, which is the coniferous forest. Beyond that, we've got the polar and the tundra element. We in Britain and elements of Europe exist within the deciduous forest biome. Then beneath us, we've got the Mediterranean and then the desert biomes, and then we've got those savanna areas which make up a lot of central and eastern and western Africa. And then towards the south of Africa, we've got the desert areas. If we look in South America, we can see lots of rainforest, and the same in lots of areas like Indonesia. And then as we go further south, it becomes more and more mountainous. Okay. Now, what I'd like you to do is to see, we're just going to go through a few examples of these, and that will help you by just shouting out, see if you can identify which biome goes where on your map that you've been asked to complete at home. So this biome for North Africa is desert. Okay, so you can see the desert there. If you look at the key at the bottom, that'll help you prompt. Okay? Then Northern Russia is tundra. Okay, so tundra is one of the areas that we're going to look at, one of the two biomes we're looking at specifically today. If you look at India, so this area of India, so Southeast Asia, and India specifically here is more than one biome, but this one's pointed at is the rainforest. Okay? You see also to the north of the rainforest where the arrow is, just to the north of there, you can see the savanna. So that's that area where zebras and other animals might live. Okay. The biome, Australia is really interesting because it's got more than one biome. Sometimes we think of Australia as just one generic ecosystem or one generic biome. However, here we can see multiple biomes, and in central Australia, the biome is desert. Okay, so we're in the centre of Australia. It's really difficult to reside because of the need for liquid. Eastern USA has deciduous forest. Okay, so that's that forest made up of trees where the leaves fall off in the autumn and regrow in the early part of the spring. Biome for us is deciduous forest. So again, most of the trees, or many of the trees in our area, are those trees where the leaves fall off in the autumn and then regrow in the spring and summer. Okay. We've got those different climate zones. We've looked at these before. I'm not going to read through these, but if you want to pause on this point to remind yourself of any examples, you can do. If not, though, we're going to move on now to mountains. Now, what we're going to do today is I'm not going to introduce much of the information about mountains. There's going to be more for you to read. I am going to introduce a lot of the information about tundra, and there's less of that for you to read. Okay, so you've got me for about 5 minutes on mountains. For about 2 minutes on mountains, and then you've got some reading to do for about 10 minutes. And you've got about 5 minutes of me on tundra biomes, and then about 3 minutes to read on that. Okay, so a mountain. It's normally where the steep slopes are normally call it a mountain. We say they have to rise over 300 meters. Okay, some say some geographers, so some experts in the field say that for it to be a mountain, it has to be at least 600 meters high. Okay, there's different ones around in different locations. We've got many in Britain. We're not a super mountainous area compared to other places such as Nepal and South America. However, within the Lake District, we've got the tallest mountain in England, which is called Scafell Pike, and in Wales, we've got Snowdon. And then in Scotland, we have the tallest mountain in Britain, which is Ben Nevis. When there's many mountains joined together, they're called mountain chains. Okay, so within Europe, we've got the Alps, and the tallest of those mountains is Mont Blanc. And then in North America, there's the Rocky Mountains, and then there's the Andes, which did feature within Peru in our previous geography topic. And they're called mountain chains. They're like chains because they're like slim slivers that go down if you look on maps where more than one mountain is almost connected together, the bumps on the mountain at the summits at the peak of the mountains. Okay. Some famous mountains just to remind us of. So we've got the most famous in the world is also the biggest in the world, Mount Everest. It used to be called, I think, Peak 14 or Peak 17 until it was surveyed surveyors about 150 years ago and identified as the tallest mountain in the world. It's in Nepal, or it's part of the Himalayan mountain chain or mountain range. It's 8,848 meters high, and that's again a huge distance. Huge distance. You need oxygen to be able to climb it. The first people who were recorded to have climbed it were somebody from the locality, somebody called Sherpa Tenzin, and a New Zealander called Edmund Hillary, and they climbed it in 1952, so just over 70 or just under 70 years ago. Prior to that, nobody had climbed it. Okay. Or nobody had been recorded to have climbed it. Kilimanjaro is the highest in Africa, so more than 2,000, nearly 3,000 meters lower, or not shorter, should I say, than Everest, but still very, very tall indeed compared to ours. Mount Fuji, very tall as well, about 4,000 meters high. Okay, that's a huge mountain in Japan, and it is a volcano, as is Kilimanjaro. And Mount Fuji is actually still occasionally has smoke emanating from it. Mount McKinley is the highest mountain in America, and that's 6,294 meters high. Mountains, their temperatures vary depending on the location of them. The higher you get, the cooler it is. Because as the warm air goes up, because we know that warm goes up if we think of smoke and steam. As warm air goes up, it expands, and because it expands, it gets spread out. It cools down. Okay. At the top, at the peaks of mountains, there's those icy, snowy surfaces, and because of that, the sun is reflected off those areas, and therefore it stays cold. Okay, so it reflects the heat off the sun. It doesn't absorb the sun. If it was a black peak, a black summit, it would absorb the heat of the sun. If you think about clothing and how we wear light-coloured clothing to reflect heat in the summer months, and with hats and things like that. Various elements on a mountain, which is why the biome is so difficult to habit. It's got that ice and things like that within it. And then there's glaciers, and we looked at glaciers within Peru. Okay, these are these icy elements which never melt. Okay? And the fact that there's glacier retreat in Peru showed us that areas were starting to retreat. Okay, and glaciers within those biomes. Right, guys, what I'd like you to look at today now is the information sheet about mountains. This is part of your pack today. You need to read about mountains and microclimates. That's that first box on the left-hand side. Then you need to read about the different plants and animals and the different types of mountains. Part of that, you're then going to compare this to our tundra information, which is coming up next. Okay? Our tundras, tundra mountains. When you think of that, do you think of a warm place, a cold place, a forest? What do you think of? Okay, well, tundras really cold. 9 months of the year are below freezing. It's the coldest of all the biomes. If you think about that picture earlier, the map of the world, it's the northerly peak beyond some of the coolest areas, and therefore it's incredibly cold. About 1/5 of the world is made up, of the land within the world is made up of tundra. And the tundra, the land within the Arctic, is only about 10,000 years old, so it's the youngest of all the biomes. There's a very short season where things can grow and reproduce. Okay, so there's not very much diversity. The biotic, if you think about it, is living things. There's not much that can live there, not much diversity. And the way that the plants are protected is actually perversely by snow. We think of snow as being almost a thing that stops things growing, but in the summer, in the winter, the snow protects the plant. Tundras found below the ice caps of the Arctic. Okay, extremely cold, and the winters are really long and dark. Okay, it's 0 or lower for more than 6 months of the year. Sometimes that's 10 months of the year, which means there's only 2 months of the year where it's above freezing. So some of those um, uh, organisms that we've looked at for microorganisms will be growing there. So mosses, sedges, and lichens, and the rainfall, the precipitation is very low. Near the Arctic Circle, therefore, really cold. Okay? It can actually not just go beneath 0; it can go as low as minus 90, minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So really, really close. But it can get really hot sometimes. Okay, it can get really hot. Well, not really hot. It can get to about 15 degrees Celsius. One of the driest places in Earth. So think about that, and it makes it quite complicated for it to produce life. Not much precipitation. Um, it's still quite wet when you walk around there because the evaporation doesn't happen there because the temperature isn't such that prompts much evaporation. There's not much sunlight there as well. Low temperatures, as we said, the rainfall does not happen much because there's quite a lot. There's not much water cycle, not much evaporation happening, and therefore there's not much water coming down. Tundra then, Siberia, which is in eastern and northern Russia, and then areas within Asia and Canada, and then the westerly strip of America in Alaska. So those are some of the places where tundra exists. Sorry, guys, my video's just frozen. Okay. And there's lots of different plants which grow there. However, these plants are ones that can only survive in such a cold environment. So things like willow, Arctic willow, february, they grow low. Caribou moss, so again more moss. Labrador tea, which don't grow very high, and then pasque flowers. So it's really pretty. But they don't grow very high. Okay, they don't grow very high. Okay, you can see some images of those different plants there. Some animals can survive there. However, they need that thick skin to avoid getting too cold. So they need to have skin that can maybe adapt to be quite light coloured so they can hide within the snow. Okay, there's osks, wolves, polar bears, which is that biggest mammal in the world, and foxes. Okay, and also brown bears. So quite a lot of furry animals surviving there due to the need to be warm. Okay, you can see some pictures of those animals there. Lots of species are becoming endangered there because the world's heating up. Polar bear, for example, are affected by global warming. Okay. You can see the food web there as they are starting now to try and get enough food within there. Okay. So just pause it on the food web, have a look at that. Really cold, lots of not that much natural resources there. Ice, there's coal, there's oil. It is really cold. Not much grows there at all. Under threat from pollution. What I'd like you to do today then is complete the map and then complete the comparison sheet, similarities and differences